now entering the Marauder's Sanctum.
Hello and welcome to the Marauder's Sanctum. I'm your humble curator. You can call me Ian. Today I would like to talk to you about how I would propose to fix the DCEU. The following are my opinions and ideas of what these movies could be. It is not law.
The evidence has been falsified. It's impossible. I never broke the law. I am the law.
If you don't agree, that's your right, and vice versa. In a bit, I'll list the films as well as the description and a brief summary of the plot. I won't do this for all of them, and I also won't do casting because, that takes a lot of time. But it could be its own separate video should the need arise. When I list the films, they will be in order of release. But first, let's get into why I felt the need to make this video. The current state of the DCEU. I won't go into depth because I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I will recommend you watch the Cosmonaut Variety Hour. They did a great breakdown on what's wrong with these movies. What I will say is DC movies are extremely dark, both in tone and visuals. What I'm proposing is we lighten it up a bit. Because at this point, it's so dark no one can see where they're fucking going. And this universe feels lost. Not every movie has to feel exactly the same tonally, but make it feel connected. This is your chance to distance yourself from the Marvel films and Marvel formula. Make the movies feel different. Let's hope J.J. Abrams, who's rumored to be put in charge of these movies, can bring some much needed levity and general direction. I mean, DC has a plethora of content from the cartoons, comics, and straight to video movies. And not for nothing, but those have also been dropping in quality recently. But that's a completely different issue. They have so much content to draw from, and yet they make movies to the equivalent of a kid who has a presentation at school the next day and glanced at the notes and starts fucking freestyling. To illustrate my point, let's take a look at a couple movies that we've gotten over the years. We started with Man of Steel, an origin film, Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, The Death of Superman, and straight into Justice League. None of which felt organic because we don't know who the fuck these people are. Well, I do because I'm a nerd and I read these comics, but you know what I mean. The audience doesn't have a chance to latch on to these characters. I'm not asking you to plagiarize yourself, DC, but you could recycle some of your stories from the comics and the vast majority of the population would not know the difference. You could also add a twist to these classic stories to also entice comic book fans. For the universe that I'm pitching, I'd like to stop constantly changing costumes. Every movie, the hero gets a new uniform. The audience is becoming entitled to it. And I get it's for action figure sales, but it doesn't feel earned. And there's no story reason for why they have the costume change. I understand moving from a prototype to a more permanent uniform, but for these movies that I'm about to pitch, for the most part, they're going to stick with their main uniform, unless, of course, for a story reason. Now, let's get started, shall we? Now, the idea would be to release 2 movies a year until the audience feels comfortable with more than 2. You just test the waters, move up to 3, and then eventually 4. The first film on the docket to start off this new universe would be Flashpoint. The characters would include Iris West, Barry Allen, Reverse Flash, Nora Allen, Henry Allen, and of course, etc., based on the script. For my costume notes, Barry starts out with the BVS suit but realizes it's not sustainable for time travel after it gets destroyed. Protruding ears would be a focal point of the suit, lightning bolt accents akin to the New 52 suit, as well as around the forearms. Now I'm choosing to restart this universe with the Flashpoint movie because it's an obvious choice. We're Days of Future Past up in this bitch, except this time we don't want to fuck it up. For this movie, I think if Back to the Future meets The Fly, tonally speaking, of course, Barry Allen accidentally stumbles upon his time travel powers after a run-in with Mirror Master. He accidentally jumps into the future, seeing the Flash Museum along with Easter eggs to Batman Beyond. When Barry returns to the present and defeats Mirror Master, he begins to theorize about time travel and the possibilities. Now, being the previous time he destroyed a whole city block, he needs to figure out a different way to time travel, so he creates a treadmill to save on property damage. He decides after visiting his father what he wants to do with this newfound power. He wants to prevent his mother's murder and proving his father's innocence. Ultimately, he defeats Zoom and realizes that it would be better for the universe as a whole if he lets his mother die. It takes him a couple tries to get it as close as he can, but he realizes there's still a couple subtle changes to the universe. He time travels a couple more times to try to reset the universe to its equilibrium. But before he gets the chance to, the final time, he's stopped by Jay Garrick, who tells him, "You're drawing entirely too much attention to yourself and you're changing a lot of things. It's not good." He tells him if he chooses to time travel again, there will be repercussions. He's vague about this because he doesn't want to scare him. The reason I'm choosing to get rid of time travel so soon is because it's an easy way to get out of situations and it's kind of a cop-out. And the changes we are left with are the changes that will reboot the DCEU, and including all the unsavory parts. What I mean by unsavory parts of the DCEU, meaning Metropolis and Gotham aren't across the fucking street from one another. Shazam, we move him from Philadelphia to Fawcett City. I like the idea of more of DC having their own fictional cities as opposed to the MCU, who has New York and New York. We keep Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Cyborg, and Flash taking the opportunity to change Batman and Superman, explaining the recasting with the fact that the timeline has been tampered with. The next film on the docket is Batman. The characters are Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson, Alfred Pennyworth, Jim Gordon, Harvey Bullock, Detective Montoya, Barbara Gordon, and Ra's al Ghul, or Raz, however the fuck you pronounce it. I'd like to start this film pitch off by saying Batman does not kill, and stop killing this man's parents. I'm sick of seeing it. My grandmother knows this man's origin by heart. And now that I've gotten that off my chest, as for the feel of the movie, it's going to be more of a detective film, more like Seven, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or Blade Runner 2049. For the costume, Batman has white eyes, short ears, a gray base suit, dark navy blue cape and cowl. Gotham feels like a cesspool, kind of like how it was depicted in the show Titans.
Where to?
Downtown.
I don't stop downtown.
Midtown.
I don't stop below 99th.
Uptown. You recommend a hotel?
Nah, Four Seasons, Boston. About 4 hours north of here.
And Batman the Animated Series, so where searchlights and blimps feel necessary. Bruce has been active as Batman for a couple years, but is still relatively new and is still a myth. As of the start of the movie, the cops and Batman aren't on the same page and getting in the way of each other's investigations. The investigation being the Falcone crime family. An enforcer of the Falcone crime family, Tony Zuko, makes a collection at the Gotham Circus, and when they can't pay, he sabotages the Trapeze Act, orphaning young Dick Grayson. Bruce, seeing the story unfold in the Batcave, feels responsible because if he'd stopped them, this wouldn't have happened. Seeing himself in young Dick Grayson, he offers to adopt him and a chance to bring his parents' killers to justice, a chance that Bruce never got. The film ends with a Ra's al Ghul end credit sequence, just to tease future story possibilities. The next film on the docket will be Superman. The characters will include Clark Kent, Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, Mercy Graves, Jimmy Olsen, Ma Pa Kent, Dr. Hamilton, and Otis. I'd like for these movies to be as lighthearted as possible, because Superman is a lighthearted character. Therefore, it should be in the vein of the original movies from Dick Donner, which had Superman depicted by Christopher Reeves, and it'll be more in the vein of a lighthearted rom-com / action adventure. Once again, we do not have to go through the origin again. Everyone knows it. In terms of costume notes, we're going to go with the trunks this time. Not the briefs and not the bodysuit. And an S on the back of the cape. And that will conclude it. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just keep it simple. In this film, Superman is freshly settled into his role as the protector of Metropolis. Clark takes time when he's not Superman to help others, watering neighbors' plants, volunteering, recommending songs to people, that kind of thing. An ongoing joke is that people keep approaching him and thanking him for the things he does. And Jimmy, Lois, and Kat keep wondering where he gets the time to do these things. Perry doesn't really care as long as he gets his job done. Both Clark and Superman smile a lot. Superman a little less, especially when it's time to get serious, and they both have sharp wit. Clark hears rumors in the bullpen about an alien being held by the government, with claims of an oncoming threat. So Superman decides to break into the government facility and let this Martian loose. His new friend introduces himself as John Jones. He explains that he was mysteriously transported to Earth in the middle of an invasion on his planet. The scientist who brought him there died, and he was blamed for his death and locked up. At this point in the story, Jean can be a window into this universe and help reintroduce us to the character of Superman, whilst establishing his own character and his powers. While that's happening, the B story is Lex Luthor becomes irritated with the love and affection Superman has been receiving from the people of Metropolis, especially since he's been the one who's made everyone's life easier with his technological advancements, and he's made it his life's mission to help improve Metropolis as a whole. And as a byproduct of these advancements, it led to him owning at least a majority of the city. He resents the fact that this alien could come and steal his thunder, so he uses his scientific expertise to transform one of his henchmen, John Corbin, into a cyborg, using a meteorite from Superman's homeworld, while taking inspiration from a similar cyborg hero that's been in the news lately. Superman, Metallo, and Martian Manhunter end up in a final confrontation, but it ultimately results in Martian Manhunter getting the brunt of the attack, leaving for Superman to have to take him on. During the fight, Metallo takes a sample of Superman's DNA. After Metallo is defeated, Martian Manhunter decides to stay on Earth and travel amongst the humans to prepare for the oncoming threat, while living amongst us to learn more about us. At the end of the movie, Lois figures out Superman and Clark are the same person, because he's never around when Superman is. Also, when Superman saves her, she realized that Superman and Clark smell exactly the same. Lois realizes she's never been that close to Superman before, or paid that close attention to Clark Kent. For the final scene of the movie, Lex is seen talking to a room full of screens, one of which is Ra's al Ghul. The rest are shadowed figures, and he tells them everything is going according to plan. For this end credit sequence, it'll just be a cute little stinger of Mr. Mxyzptlk. Let's try saying that 3 times fast. Next film on the roster is Aquaman 2. I don't have that much to say about it because they're doing a pretty good job. I will say Ad King Shark is the villain. As for the plot, let's say people are getting attacked on the surface by some kind of mysterious monster. During the investigation, Aquaman gets hurt in a surprise attack. Calderon is assigned to him as a knight or a /mage because of his water manipulation powers, and he's assigned to protect the King of Atlantis. The public decides to call him Aqualad. He doesn't like the name at first, but ultimately decides to accept it. Next up is Legion of Superheroes. It's going to be a Guardians of the Galaxy meets Goonies. For characters, we're going to have Clark Kent, Lightning Lad, Saturn Girl, Cosmic Boy, Mon Pa Kent, Lana Lang, Pete Ross, and Lex Luthor. The Legionnaires decide to go back in time to the 21st century and meet their hero, the one who inspired them to become heroes, Superman. But being that time travel is outlawed in the 31st century, they don't exactly get the math right. So they end up going to the portion of time where Clark Kent has not become Superman yet, but still excited to meet their hero. They still go along with the plan. The Legionnaires provide young Clark Kent with some much needed hope for the future. A future where aliens and humans live in harmony and they don't have to hide their identities. They take him to the 31st century, but hide the fact that he becomes the world's greatest superhero. Emerald Empress, Mordru, the Persuader, and Validus hear about young Superman in the 31st century and decide that killing him would stop the existence of the Legion. They give Clark a precursor to his suit, along with the Legionnaire ring, since he can't fly yet. They return Clark to the exact moment they took him from. They let him keep the suit and the Legion ring. In future Superman movies, he will flash back to his time with the Legion. The next movie is Flash 2. Barry's having a hard time balancing his life and his hero gig, especially with the spike in crime and supervillains. At the beginning of the film, Iris is tasked to watch her nephew because her brother Rudy says he can't get through to him and ships him from Coast City to Central City. On the same train ride that Wally West is heading into the city, both Mirror Master and Weather Wizard plan to rob the very same train. Except they're not working together, so they end up fighting over the loot and destroying the train and the loot in the process. Flash saves the civilians but can't chase Weather Wizard or Mirror Master because he can't be in more than one place at once. Both Weather Wizard and Mirror Master meet in a nearby bar to discuss what went wrong and how they could possibly work together and get more done. Trickster attempts to butt into their plans, but is immediately told to kick rocks. After being saved by the Flash, Wally takes up an interest in the Flash, whereas before he had a curiosity about the Flash. Now he has decidedly become a fan, thanks to the fact that the Flash saved his life. Trickster will continue to make random cameos throughout the movie, and a couple robberies while the Flash is distracted with the bigger villains. There will be an end credit sequence reminiscent of the scene from this Justice League cartoon.
You're off your meds, aren't you?
I'm better off without him. Take him if I start feeling down.
You know that's not how the medicine works. You're not well.
I'm fine. You want to throw some darts?
No. Listen, James, you're wearing the suit again.
I am? Well, what do you know?
Here's the deal, buddy. Tell me where those guys went, and I promise to come see you in the hospital. We'll play darts. The soft kind.
Okay. They're gonna ambush you at the Flash Museum.
See? That's all we needed. Come on, we better get over there.
What about your enemy?
Oh, right. Dude, as soon as you finish your drink, turn yourself in.
Got me again, Flash.
Where it leads in to Justice League the movie. The next film is Batman Superman World's Finest. This film will essentially be the first half of Hush. Bruce is following up on a lead in Metropolis after interrogating Catwoman. Clark is working on a story that coincidentally overlaps with Bruce's investigation. They run into each other, in and out of costume. Ivy controls Superman's mind with her pollen/kryptonite blend. After snapping Superman out of it, they realize that Ivy was under someone else's influence. By the end of the movie, Batman and Superman have a mutual respect for one another. It doesn't necessarily lead to their friendship. The end credit sequence is Lex Luthor meeting with Ra's al Ghul and Vandal Savage. This will lead into the Justice League movie. Vandal Savage and Ra's al Ghul decide to reveal themselves to go after an artifact from Jason Blood. In his collection is believed to be an artifact from Thanagar. Hawkgirl, an officer from Thanagar, receives a signal from the device after not being used in years. The team lineup will be Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Martian Manhunter. You can also integrate the Green Lanterns from the HBO series, but anyone except for Hal, because Marvel already did that with Captain Marvel. By the end of the film, the League establishes the Hall of Justice. Task Force X. Tonally, it'll be like Mission Impossible. It'll be small scale, and the lineup will be KG Beast, Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Dr. Light, Vertigo, Sportsmaster, Ragdoll, and Black Orchid. The mission itself is to steal Dr. Fate's helmet from Star Labs. For Batman 2, Bruce is back in Gotham and keeps running into dead ends, but he knows he's at the heels of his enemy. And this movie will introduce the Question. This movie will of course be the second half of Hush, except it'll end differently. Hush won't be the Riddler. For Wonder Woman 3, keep up the good work, maybe Giganta, Dr. Psycho, and introduce Wonder Girl. The movie will end with the Justice League stinger. The next film is Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. The crime syndicate will be the villains. Now would be a good time to introduce DC's Elseworlds. It's a good way to give people a breather from the main universe. These films would be interspliced throughout the DC lineup. What I like best about these stories is it gives you a good insight on who these characters are, no matter what Earth they're on or what timeline. And they're one-offs that you never have to revisit. Never. Never. Never! So long as you brand these films clearly as Elseworlds films, I don't see why the public wouldn't have a problem with understanding this. As far as what films to do, there's Gotham by Gaslight, The New Frontier, Kingdom Come, Earth 2, Gods and Monsters, All-Star Superman, and The Dark Knight Returns. I'm sure there's a plethora more that you can tell me about in the comments. Also, this is an opportunity for fresh casting. Cast completely different actors, just to fully solidify that this is separate from the main DCEU. Teen Titans. Cyborg is the den mother, so to speak, seeing as he's not an actual teen. He provides the team with missions and oversight. Lineup includes Cyborg, Robin, Kid Flash, Martian Manhunter, Calderon, and Wonder Girl. The villain of the film will be Slade Wilson, who was hired to kill the Prime Minister of Markovia. Shazam 2. You're doing fine. I'm not really familiar with the character, but he's one of my grandfather's favorites. Just include the Hawks and you should be fine. Mongol hires Lobo to go to Earth in search of their champion, the fabled Superman. However, Superman was in the middle of a fight with the Parasite. Lobo sees his powers and decides there may be more money to be made here after all, so he takes them both. Superman is transported to Mongol's quarters, where he is told that he will compete against other champions in a Hunger Games-like televised battle. When he is dropped onto the planet Warworld, Superman realizes that his powers are gone due to the planet's red sun, so he must now cope without his powers. At the end of the film, Superman traps Mongol in the Phantom Zone, deciding he's too dangerous to be left out, but this decision clearly weighs heavy on his shoulders. Clark, thinking that his day couldn't possibly get any more interesting, decides to settle into bed when he hears the Earth's atmosphere shift. He suits up to investigate and sees a ship not dissimilar from his own. Inside the ship is a young woman wrapped in a blanket with the House of L crest on it. Static Shock. Tonally, it'll be close to Spider-Man. Virgil Hawkins is a teenager from Dakota City who finds himself in the middle of gang violence. That is until a police riot which causes an explosion on the docks, which gives everyone on the docks superpowers. Virgil receives electrical superpowers and seeks the mentorship of a retired superhero, Black Lightning, who is now a high school principal. This is a great way to introduce the Dakotaverse. Flash 3. The villain is Zoom. Alright, I'm going to run through these next couple. Wonder Woman Hawkgirl crossover. The Question. Constantine. Batman Beyond origin movie. My only real note for this movie is to nerf his suit's invisibility. Make it last like a minute. Justice Society. Vandal Savage is the villain. The lineup is Jay Garrick, Wildcat, Alan Scott, Hawkman, Dr. Fate, Hourman, and the film takes place in the 60s. Batman 3. The villain is Ra's al Ghul. Justice League Dark. It's going to be like DC's Doctor Strange, where Raven is introduced, as well as Zatanna and Swamp Thing. Constantine will be part of the lineup, and so will Deadman, who I forgot to mention will be part of the Constantine film. Justice League. Amazo will be the villain to start off the movie, but it'll transition into Tower of Babel, but with the legion of supervillains in this adaptation. After the events of the film, Batman will tender his resignation to the League without hearing their vote. Before he leaves, he tells them he'll still keep the lights on in the Watchtower. He's not that vindictive. He will of course help out on occasion, like when the next Justice League film happens, but he won't be affiliated with the League anymore. At the end of the film, most of the League leaves Earth to follow clues left behind by the Legion of Doom, alluding to the arrival of Darkseid. Superman 3. Flashback to Krypton being destroyed. The artificial intelligence Brainiac has created Doomsday using Jor-El's research. Little did we know that he snuck aboard Kara's ship when she arrived to Earth in the last film, providing a beacon for Doomsday's arrival. Lex Luthor and Superman are forced to team up to defeat Doomsday. Superman is able to defeat Doomsday, but at a cost. His life. The entire Justice League will of course be at his funeral. Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, buddy action comedy movie in the vein of 21 Jump Street, Batgirl origin movie. And to round out this extremely long pitch, it'll be Justice League versus Darkseid. The movie will include everyone on the roster of the Justice League so far, apart from Superman. Alright ladies and gents, that'll conclude my pitch for 10 years worth of DCEU movies. Let me know if you think I missed anything or you have any ideas of your own. To cap off my point, you're a consumer. Your voice should be heard. Within reason, of course. It shouldn't change a movie when it's already slated to be released. Studios should do the right thing to begin with. Thank you for your time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to watch your step on your way out of the sanctum.
The power is yours!